Let's review the film with Andrew Krammer here from the Vikings' first loss of the season, 31-29 on Sunday at US Bank Stadium, kind of throwing the NFC North into kind of a wide open state, Andrew, and maybe raising more questions about the Vikings than we had going in.
It did. Yeah, it did. I think Sam Darnold was the guy everybody was watching, certainly, and to see how he'd bounce back from what wasn't his best effort against the Jets or the second half against the Packers, certainly. And yeah, it was more of the ups and downs, more of the exciting big plays that we're used to seeing from this offense and that they're capable of, but not the consistency, the methodical nature that you certainly saw from Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions.
I'm going to start with my 3 hot takeaways, then we'll get into the review of the film. Some of these might overlap as well, but okay, this is the least of the spiciness, the least spicy of the 3 hot takeaways. Vikings missed Blake Cashman more than I could have ever imagined. He was really, the absence of him, especially in kind of over-the-middle pass coverage, I didn't realize how valuable he was until that game.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of ways that he was missed that we couldn't see too, just because of how he's leaned on as a communicator. And
Yeah.
Brian Flores talks about this Vikings defense as a check-based system, which often means that they could have 3 or 4 different play options before the snap, and they have to adjust and get into the right call. And Cashman runs a lot of that show. He points out a lot of things at the line of scrimmage, and so I wonder. I don't think we'll ever get the truth on the record from Vikings coaches, but I wonder how limited their defensive package was with Ivan Pace having to handle some of that. From what I heard from players, it sounds like Harrison Smith stepped up and handled a little bit more as well. But it was kind of leaned on for a second-year player in Ivan Pace, who typically he had those duties taken away from him after handling it at the end of last year, and they gave it to a newcomer in Cashman just because of how good he is at it. You mentioned too just his play, not just the mental side of things, right. But the guy was tied for the lead, the team lead, with 5 pass deflections entering the game in those first 5 games. The guy's a menace. He had, in that Jets game, made that awesome play where he leapt at Rodgers' arm and deflected the arm on a play that just seemed like was dead in the water for the Vikings in terms of affecting the quarterback. So he's a good blitzer, good cover guy, one of the smartest defenders that they have. And they've got guys like Metellus, Van Ginkel, who can step in and do those things. But Josh Metellus is a strong safety, and asking him to play what was 30, 40 snaps or so at that interior spot, because make no mistake, he was the main guy that replaced Blake Cashman because of how smart he is, how versatile he is. But this was such a run-heavy Detroit offense that you could tell up the middle, late in the game, they were leaning on the Vikings defensive lines. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they missed Cashman a lot, not just intellect, not just pass coverage, but also because Josh Metellus is not the biggest natural run defender at linebacker.
Spicy hot takeaway number 2. If they hadn't gotten that procedure penalty near the end of the game, I think they would have not only tried, but I think Will Reichard would have made that 67-yarder. Because the way he boomed that 57-yarder, there was room to spare. I have full faith in Will Reichard to make that kick.
He made 58-yarder too earlier this season, second longest or tied for the second longest, I think, in franchise history or something like that. Yeah, he's got the leg, and Kevin O'Connell agreed with you. He said after the game, I would have brought him out there from 68 yards, but 73 obviously made it a bridge too far. And I think the thing was the Vikings got that penalty and really only got that second because of the penalty. So I don't know if this is even a hypothetical that could have happened, because there was a lot of talk on social media and Lions circles, NFL circles of like, wait a minute, how did that penalty not cause a 10-second runoff? And that penalty can kind of be used as a way to buy an extra second by running a play, even though you're not legal, if it doesn't cause a 10-second runoff, which it did not. So if they didn't get the penalty, I don't know if they get the snap off in time. It would have been very, very close. But yeah, man, like, what is it? 30 straight kicks for Will Reichard to begin his NFL career. It's phenomenal. And the guys certainly got the leg, but they felt like 73 yards was just outside of it.
I would think so. Yeah, 73 would have been a little bit too much, but it was a little frustrating too, because Darnold took forever to throw that ball. And if he throws it, if he's able to find somebody 2 seconds earlier, maybe they get up to midfield and have a chance to spike that ball with 1 or 2 seconds legally and maybe give him a chance at that. It's a tough spot to be in. You're at your own 30 with 15 seconds left. I did not think Detroit managed the clock very well at the end of the game because they took the kneel downs that barely took any time. They kicked it off deep. It's like you could have basically had the Vikings down to like 2 or 3 seconds if you'd played that a little bit differently.
Yeah, they might have. They might have, but Sam couldn't make them pay for it. And the Vikings, I mean, at the end of the game themselves should have ran it out on their own possession, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yes. Final hot takeaway. I'm going to say right now the Lions are the best team in the NFL. I think they're the best teams in the NFL. That's the best team I've seen this season. I know Kansas City's undefeated. They got yourself some Patrick Mahomes. I get it. I think they're the best team in the NFL.
That's spicy. I like that. That is pretty spicy because we're watching the Ravens tonight, or it'll have been last night for listeners of this podcast. I think they have contention for that. Anytime you've got Patrick Mahomes and Steve Spagnuolo's defense, they look phenomenal in Kansas City, even if the offense is sputtering. And I would still take Josh Allen in a 1-game sample size for any given game. But you're right. Best roster top to bottom. Detroit seems like the quote unquote new 49ers of the NFC in terms of the team that just seems so solid. However, they're going to miss Aiden Hutchinson so much. And they're not going to be. I think we could talk a little bit too about why Detroit's such an issue for Minnesota, because the strengths of the Lions match up so well against the weaknesses of the Vikings. And the Detroit's not every week going to be able to win up the middle interior the way that they did consistently against this Vikings offense. And they're not going to scare every quarterback into making a lot of quick check down type or scramble decisions the way that Sam Darnold eventually seemed to get kind of into, where it was just the clock in his head was sped up. He left plays on the field at times. For a guy who threw for 250 yards, 22 of 27, box score, it looked good.
Yeah.
But in the game, it just seemed like he left too much on the field. Rewatching it, that definitely stood out. So to me, Detroit is going to have tougher tasks on defense than the Vikings gave them, because I think Sam Darnold just didn't take everything that Detroit was willing to give.